All right, what's up, guys? Welcome to Diabetes Talk. I'm your host, Charlie O'Connell, and we are broadcasting live and direct from New Haven, Connecticut. And today's topic is understanding how the time of day can impact your diabetes during your workouts. And this is one of the most important topics that we share in the glucose zone. Guys, the time of day is an independent variable that can cause changes to your glucose levels, regardless of the food that you've eaten, the medication that you've taken, and the type of exercise that you're doing. So our goal of today's talk is to really shed light on the specifics of how your workout is impacted by the time of day and give you some very, very practical tips as to how to quantify and measure that impact, and then solutions for if the impact of the time of day is actually causing a negative outcome with the management of your diabetes. And of course, we always want to answer your questions. So let's start off, guys, with the morning itself. The morning, for the purposes of this discussion, is anywhere between 4:30 a.m. and 9 a.m., okay? And there's something called the morning dawn effect. And what the morning dawn effect is a rise in glucose levels that occurs in the morning that can be exacerbated by exercise. And it's very important that you understand what the morning dawn effect is, ultimately understand when it's something that is worth dealing with versus something that's really negatively impacting your diabetes. So the first thing to understand is that the morning dawn effect is a totally natural occurrence that happens to everybody, whether you have diabetes or not. Your body is designed to supply you with energy when you go from a resting state to an active state. It's one of the reasons why aerobic exercise in the morning is recommended so frequently, because your body is actually designed to be most effective at supplying energy in that morning time period. And something that I want to emphasize is there's a lot of misinformation and really genius marketing campaigns that basically tell you that you need to eat something before working out, or don't forget to fuel up before working out. And I don't fall for that, okay? As long as you are eating in a healthy way, as long as you are eating consistently, okay, and your portion sizes are reasonable, your body has more than enough stored energy to supply you with the energy you need to perform exercise, especially in the morning. So let's understand what's happening. When you go from a resting state to an active state, your body will literally secrete stored glycogen out of your liver into your bloodstream. And an easy and kind of fun way to understand that has to do with, if you went back to, let's take it back to caveman times. When we were cavemen and cave women, we did not have a refrigerator full of food waiting down the hall from our bedroom, okay? We did not have 7-Eleven. We did not have McDonald's. We did not have Dunkin' Donuts. We did not have these immediate sources of food that required zero energy to actually secure. If we were cavemen or cave women and we wanted to eat breakfast, we actually had to go out and secure breakfast. So that was either foraging through the forest or going into the fields and harvesting food, or actually hunting for it or fishing for it. And that actual activity requires energy. Very important that you understand that all activity requires energy. Okay? So back then, our bodies evolved to supply energy when we went from that resting state to that active state, and the end result was a rise in your blood sugar levels. Now, for people who don't have diabetes, that rise in glucose levels is naturally regulated by a temporary rise in insulin levels. And it's very important that you understand that The pancreas secretes two hormones primarily. It secretes insulin and it secretes a hormone called glucagon. And in a healthy functioning non-diabetic metabolism, the hormones insulin and glucagon play a very sophisticated tango. Okay? So glucagon is the hormone that causes the release of sugar into the bloodstream, and that causes blood sugar levels to go up. Insulin is the hormone that causes the absorption of the sugar that's been released into the muscles. Okay? So in a healthy, functioning endocrine and metabolism, glucagon and insulin play this very sophisticated tango where they're always working back and forth to make sure that our body has energy to perform activity and that our blood sugar levels are staying steady. Now, for people who don't have diabetes, this doesn't work very well. And the cause of it not working very well varies depending on the type of diabetes that you have. So for example, some people have an overactive secretion of glycogen out of the liver. And there is a medication called Metformin, which addresses that. So what Metformin actually does is Metformin inhibits the release of sugar from your liver. Okay? That is one medication that can address the inappropriate secretion of glycogen out of the liver. Okay? There's another medication called insulin. Insulin is something that people with type 1 diabetes use, where their liver is secreting glucose fine, but the insulin is not matching. Okay? So the point is that there are different causes, okay, of the morning of basically, or let me rephrase that. There are different ways to manage the morning dawn effect from a medication perspective, but the first thing is understanding what's happening. All right? Now, I'm going to share with you a little story that is going to convey to you how important this information can actually be. Early on, when I first started GlucoseZone, I had a client that was referred to me, and she was referred by her doctor. And when she got here, she was very frustrated. And what she said was, I've been working out for the past 6 months with a personal trainer 3 times a week. And not only have I not lost any weight, but my A1C has gotten worse. Okay? And she was very frustrated and very upset. And she explained to me that she was showing up to the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning to work out with this personal trainer. Now, as soon as she said, I'm working out at 5 o'clock in the morning, 2 things popped into my mind. The first thing was, this is a motivated person. Okay? And I don't care who you are. Nobody likes waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And if you're waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go exercise, and especially to go to the gym, you are motivated, okay, to get your life together. So that was number one. The second thing that popped in my head was, maybe this person is experiencing the morning dawn effect. So what did we do? We scheduled for her to come to the GlucoseZone at 5 o'clock in the morning. And what did we do? She got here. The very first thing we did was test her blood sugar. Okay? And when she tested her blood sugar level was 120, which you guys know, that's a good number. Okay? So we said, okay, blood sugar is 120. Now we're going to have you walk on the treadmill for 20 minutes. We didn't have her do kickboxing. She didn't do any heavy weightlifting. Nothing from an intensity perspective that could cause a spike in her glucose levels. Okay? Just walking. Walked on the treadmill for 20 minutes, and we stopped. Tested her blood sugar again, and her blood sugar was 240. She threw her hands up in the air. Her lip was quivering, and she said, I thought exercise was supposed to help my diabetes. And she was so frustrated. And I said, well, is this what usually happens? She said, I don't know. We never test my blood sugar when I'm working out. Okay. Make a long story short, this poor woman was working out with a bozo personal trainer who had no clue about diabetes. Having her show up at the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning. She was showing up at the gym with normal blood glucose levels, leaving with dangerously elevated blood sugar levels. And that was having a whole negative ripple effect on her diabetes. Okay? In her case, we just switched the time of day of her workouts. We switched her workouts from before work to after work. And the impact that that one switch had was truly remarkable. In 11 months, she lost 107 pounds, and her A1C went from 6.9 to 5.6, and her doctor was taken off. Her doctor took her off of her diabetes medications, which was phenomenal. And it's a really, really important anecdotal story about how the time of day can really impact your exercise and how the time of day can impact your diabetes. All right? And in her case, if she had not gone through that process and she had continued to work out in the morning, she probably would have been put on another medication. And in fact, she needed the exact opposite. So the morning time, if you have diabetes, you need to be careful for the morning dawn effect. Now, having said that, okay, I want to encourage you to work out in the morning, as long as you're not an extreme case like I just shared, where in that woman's particular case, it just made sense for her to avoid the morning because she was having such an extreme impact on her diabetes. I do want to encourage you to work out in the morning. I love working out in the morning. Now, the way that I manage my workouts in the morning is different. I have type 1 diabetes, and in my case, so I have type 1 diabetes, and I also experienced a severe case of the morning dawn effect. So almost every morning, my blood sugar levels skyrocket as soon as I wake up. And I have come to understand through practice and trial and error that I actually require a dose of insulin in the morning when I first wake up. And I will actually, in most cases, take insulin and then go work out in the morning, which, if you're considering that, you have to coordinate that with your healthcare provider and talk with your doctor, and you have to test your blood sugar frequently, okay? But the value that I get from that is immense, and here's the reason why. When you experience the morning dawn effect, it fundamentally means that your liver parking lot, right, and we talk a lot about how sugar is stored in your body, and it's stored in different parking lots. Morning exercise will stimulate the depletion of your liver parking lot, the emptying out of your liver parking lot. It will stimulate the depletion of your muscle parking lots. That means it will stimulate the emptying out of your muscle parking lots. And when you do that, you dramatically increase your sensitivity to insulin for the rest of the day. You also dramatically increase the likelihood of healthy fat metabolism occurring in your body because you put yourself at something called a calorie deficit. And what a calorie deficit means is the expenditure of calories before you've had something to eat. Or in my case, I like to do green juicing, okay? And that is the one thing that I would recommend is I do a green juice in the morning before I go work out. And I do that for two reasons. Number one, as a type 1 diabetic, it's always important that if you are taking insulin, you do have some sort of food that you're consuming. And in my case, the green juicing, which has about 10 grams of carbs, for me, is a really, really effective way of managing that balance. Okay? The second thing is with the green juicing, it gives my body all the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients I need. So I have really come to enjoy that as a first thing in the morning type of thing. Ultimately, you need to talk to your healthcare provider. You need to find the foods that work for you. And the topic of this talk is about the time. It's not about the food. So the point is the morning dawn effect is real. I want to encourage you to do morning exercise, even though that can occur. And you need to ultimately figure out if there's a balance, right? You're balancing the reward and the risk of how the morning dawn effect impacts your diabetes. All right. Now let's move on to the next part of the day, which is the mid-morning. Mid-morning to early afternoon is anywhere between 9 and 10 a.m. to about 1 or 2 p.m. And this time of day is where you actually have to be careful for the exact opposite. You have to be careful for low blood sugar. And there's something called chasing insulin. And what the term chasing insulin means is your body is basically has too much insulin in it, and it does not have any food-derived glucose left. And exercise can amplify that effect and cause a hypoglycemic incident very quickly. So if you're getting ready to exercise in the mid-morning, depending on your medication profile, you definitely want to be careful for low blood sugar. And this is something that's terrible. This affects especially kids living with type 1 diabetes in the following scenario. They wake up to get ready for school and they experience the morning dawn effect. Their parents are frustrated by the morning dawn effect and they basically overcompensate with insulin. And so what happens is they take way too much insulin first thing in the morning. They eat way too much food first thing in the morning. Now, that's usually around between 6 and 7 a.m. Now, fast forward to, let's say, 10:30 in the morning. All of the sugar from the food that's been consumed has gone away, but there's leftover insulin. And there's a very, very important thing to understand is that insulin stacks. So the more insulin you inject into yourself, if you're a person that injects insulin, the longer its presence is going to be. And what ends up happening is the kid starts gym class at 10:30 in the morning. There's all this excess insulin from the overcompensation of the morning dawn effect, and there's no food-derived glucose. And what happens? Boom, a big crash. Okay? And it's a terrible problem that can be addressed by understanding the time of day and how it actually impacts glucose levels. So I want you to be aware of that. Now, if you are a person that's not taking insulin, let's say, for example, that you are just managing your type 2 diabetes through diet and exercise, then for all of those reasons that mid-morning exercise can be a bad idea for somebody with type 1 diabetes, all of those same reasons are actually why mid-morning exercise can be a good idea if you have type 2 diabetes and you are not taking medications that have a side effect or risk of hypoglycemia. And it's very, very important that you are aware of what medications you're taking. This is one of the reasons, guys, why when we ask you to fill out your profile in GlucoseZone, this is one of the reasons why we're asking you what medications are you taking, because some medications have a risk of hypoglycemia, others don't. All right, now, the next time is the afternoon. So this is anywhere from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. And there's a couple guidelines with this time frame. So the first one is your personal experience is going to dictate your strategy. And ultimately, the most important thing to be aware of is how the timing of the release of insulin matches with the timing of the release of glucose from the food that you're eating. And you want to make sure that those are matching. So what do I mean by that? So we have all kinds of people who come to the Glucose Zone, and they share the following issue. They say, I'm really frustrated because every day at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I test my blood sugar and it's 250. And I don't understand why that's happening because I had a salad for lunch. I have a salad for lunch every day. I don't eat any carbs, and I don't understand why is this happening. And we'll say, okay, what do you have for breakfast? And the person will say, almost universally, the person will say, I have a bowl of oatmeal for breakfast every morning. Okay, so here's the thing about foods like oatmeal. Oatmeal is a trick food for people living with diabetes. And here's the reason why. Oatmeal is considered low glycemic index. So anytime you hear the term glycemic index, that's referencing time, the amount of time that a food takes to become glucose in your body. So oatmeal is a low glycemic index food. What that means is it takes a long time for the actual food to turn into glucose. But oatmeal is also a high glycemic load food. So the term glycemic load is referencing the actual total amount of carbohydrate in the food. So the problem with oatmeal for people living with diabetes is it takes a long time for it to actually become sugar, but once it does become sugar, it represents a ton of sugar, and it will supply your body for hours and hours and hours with food-derived glucose. And that can be really, really hard and challenging to manage if you have diabetes. So in that example that I used, people living with diabetes, if they have a bowl of oatmeal at, say, 7 a.m., that oatmeal may not actually hit their system until 3 or 4 p.m. And the end result is high blood sugar levels, okay, in the afternoon. And generally speaking, I recommend that people living with diabetes stay away from foods like oatmeal in the morning, stay away from foods like pasta in the evening because of this timing issue. All right, it makes it very hard to manage your diabetes. It also makes it very hard to lose weight because if you have a food in your body that's constantly supplying you with glucose, it's going to be very hard to achieve healthy fat metabolism. All right, the last time of day is the evening. Now, the evening is anywhere from 6 p.m. to, say, 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning. And again, personal experience is going to dictate your strategy, but there's something called nighttime hypoglycemia, okay? Nighttime hypoglycemia can be avoided or taken advantage of by understanding how exercise increases your sensitivity to insulin. And it's very, very important that you understand that relationship. So when you exercise, the exercise itself depletes the glycogen out of your muscles, okay? When you deplete glycogen out of your muscles, you make yourself more sensitive to insulin the next time you eat food, okay? And ultimately, that can be either a negative thing or, if you understand it correctly, can actually be a positive thing. So let me break down the situations where that's a negative thing. And again, this mostly has to do with people living with type 1 diabetes who are having trouble managing their insulin replacement, their insulin hormone replacement therapy. So people living with type 1 diabetes, they struggle with nighttime hypoglycemia because what happens? Let's say they exercise at 6 or 7 p.m. at night, and they fundamentally deplete the glycogen out of their muscles, because they've done a really hard workout. Maybe they've done a GlucoseZone, say a level 3 weightlifting workout, okay? When they deplete the glycogen out of their muscles, that fundamentally changes their sensitivity to insulin. And the bottom line is you need less insulin than you did if you hadn't done that workout. And what happens is people do not understand that relationship in an effective way. They end up taking way too much insulin, not factoring in the increase in sensitivity to insulin, and then later on at night, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, they wake up with severe hypoglycemia. Okay, and it's a terrible problem. It's a problem that can be totally avoided if you understand this fundamental relationship between exercise and an increase in sensitivity to insulin. And the bottom line is, if you have type 1 diabetes, you should be taking less insulin. Now, that's where it's a negative situation. I'm going to flip it on its head a little bit, though, and talk about how it's a positive situation. And I'm going to use myself as an example. So, when we do our GlucoseZone live workouts and where I'm the fitness personality, it's nighttime here in New Haven, Connecticut. Our workout starts at 6:30 at night, okay? I actually really enjoy working out at nighttime because I like to eat. This is the most important piece of this, okay? The more I work out at nighttime, the more I lift weights, the more I stimulate the depletion of glycogen out of my muscles. Basically what that means is the more that I can eat at dinner time. And if you're like me and you like to eat, especially after a long day, okay, you can actually really start to come to count on the impact of exercise at nighttime as a way to counterbalance food. All right? And ultimately, I want you to understand this. So, am I telling you that you can do GlucoseZone and then go eat a large pizza? No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that if you exercise at nighttime and you go hard with your exercise at nighttime, you fundamentally are going to change and improve your sensitivity to insulin, and it's going to make managing dinner time a little bit easier, okay? And you are less likely to wake up with high blood sugar in the morning, okay? All right. That is exactly 30 minutes. Just shared a ton of information with you. I do want to answer one question that came up. And it came up from one of our best users, from Jeanette. Okay, so Jeanette said, can I ask, if you're supposed to have 45 carbs for breakfast, do you still eat something with the green juice? All right, so I hope that I'm reading that wrong. But here's the thing, Jeanette. 45 carbs for breakfast is way too many carbs. 45 carbs, way too many carbs. Your goal for breakfast should be 15 carbs or less. Okay? And that ultimately could be a real key to weight loss. Because if you are consuming 45 grams of carbs for breakfast, it is going to be impossible to achieve healthy fat metabolism basically for the rest of the day. There's 45 grams of carbs. That is a huge amount of carbohydrate that requires a ton of insulin, whether that insulin is secreted naturally or if you're injecting it. Either way, it doesn't matter. That creates a huge presence of insulin in your body. The presence of insulin inhibits fat metabolism, and it's very challenging to achieve healthy weight loss and healthy fat metabolism if you're consuming that many carbs in the morning. So I want to be very clear with that because it was a really good question, and a lot of people in general are consuming way too many carbs. All right, On that note, we're going to sign off. I want to do a huge shout out to Instagram. Butch Quick, Melanie joining us on Instagram, Kendall joining us on Instagram. I see you. It's great to have you here. And really, GlucoseZone around the world. Everybody joining us from the States, from India, from the Philippines. We really, really had a wonderful, wonderful community and dialogue today going on YouTube. Huge shout out to Nikita, Maria, and everybody else. Vara Daraj joining us from India. It's great to have you guys here, okay? And I can't wait for you to join me in the GlucoseZone again. Great job.